it looks like everybody is in or coming in slowly but surely, as we are supposed to like to start on time, so we will get started right away. I just want to say good morning to those joining from Africa and Europe. Good afternoon to those joining from Asia. Thank you for joining today's online event, Innovation Financing. Growing fast and needing capital to grow further. We will share some of our stories, as well as why some do it well and others fail. It is part of our knowledge transfer web series, which we do every Monday on the first of the month. And we will be continuing this into 2021. So look out for that schedule coming up soon. My name is Elisa King. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager at the World Innovations Forum. Firstly, a couple of housekeeping. There is no need to take screenshots or record this video today because we will be sharing the recording as well as the presentation with yourselves. Secondly, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please post them in the Zoom question and answer panel. This way we can address them at the end. If you're having any technical issues, please feel free to chat me. I am Team WIForum, Elisa. I will try to address those issues if you're having any issues with can't hear. So yeah, without further ado, I will introduce our speaker. If you have joined us on our knowledge transfer each month, then you know him very well. If you are very new to this, welcome and thank you for joining. So our speaker today is Axel Schlitzer. He is our founder and chairman of the World Innovations Forum. He is a highly successful entrepreneur who spent most of his life in Silicon Valley and started and exited about 4 companies, and one of them IPO'd. He successfully raised about 20 rounds of funding from VCs, angels, and 4 from crowdfunding. He also helped raise countless rounds of funding for startups, so he's well-versed in innovation financing and what you guys need to do. So without further ado, I will let him take it away.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Yeah, and also good morning or good afternoon, good evening, I think, as I see the attendee list. I think, yeah, Australia is really evening right now, isn't it? So anyway, yeah, thanks for joining on our innovation financing webinar. And this knowledge transfer series is no advertising for World Innovations Forum. It's basically helping with experiences that we had over the years and share this with others. So that said, let me just dive into the presentation. So real quick word about the team. It's actually something we're teaching also when you pitch, whether it's in an innovation center to your CFO or to a VC, start with your amazing team and be proud of it. And if you are not, then replace it. Sorry to say that, because if it doesn't work with a team, it probably is not only not good for the company, it's probably also not good for those teammates that are not really a fit. And so we selected amazing people. I mean, from enterprises from around the world, from within the startup field, within the innovation field. And so you have a lot of very cool people behind, the whole idea and the vision that we have. Today, Innovation Financing, it's our 7th event, and we have one more to go this year when we talk about Dream Team Assembly, talking about team. So today, I'd like to start with why are CEOs and investors so focused on innovation? And you will notice throughout the webinar, I start with questions that you probably heard as well or ask as well, and questions that pop all over. Those who know me also on Quora, I'm just trying to help as good as I can. Probably had several thousand answers, and that's one of them. Why are these guys so, totally focused on innovation? Isn't it good enough to have a nice job, nice business, small business or medium-sized business without innovation? And I wanted to say this quite upfront. It's absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with a non-innovative company. However, investors and CEOs of large companies are doomed to innovate. I mean, that is something that has evolved over, I mean, at the end of the day, over 300,000 years when we got the first innovation, the spear, but today it's a huge pressure from the market, from the stock market, from the board, from the users, the customer community, and the competition. And there is a reason why. If you look into innovation today, and you yourself know, I mean, when the pharmaceutical, not the pharmaceutical, the agricultural revolution started, you know, this is when we were down here. So the invention of the plow was a key thing in our innovative journey. Then later on, we built wagons, we built houses, we built a steam engine, and this was the era when actually the industrial revolution started. Now, out of this, you know, you see that tree popping right and left, literally, medicine, pens, cars, trains, fridges, TVs, internet, health analytics, skyscrapers, I mean, locomotives. I mean, the number is just gigantic and exploded. Now, the reason is not that more and more people started to innovate, but the reason is that every innovation sparks new ideas in our brain. And those of you who have been following us for a longer time know that we're deep dive in neuroscience, understanding how our mind actually creates these ideas. And that is a very critical reason here to understand, because one pops on top of the other. So yeah, this looks good. And then the question is, do we really need to innovate even more? Well, we don't need to, as from a perspective of, you know, we have a good life. Why should we change anything? But there are on this planet billions of people who don't have a good life yet. And that is one reason, but there is another reason. When we think about innovation, we think about new ideas that pop up in our mind, whether we like it or not. And the more experiences we have and the more innovation we see and reflect in our mind, the more we actually start to think about, can this help us solve that problem? By 2030, it will look like this. An amazing evolutionary bomb. I mean, you know, it is very clear this is exponential growth and innovation, not because of crazy people. And the other thing that is, at least from my perspective, amazing, every emerging country will contribute to this. And the emerging countries together are basically 3 times as big as the developed countries. So our whole world will become further developed as a whole. And if you look into countries like Nigeria or Ghana or Rwanda or, you know, Cambodia and Vietnam, and I mean, all these countries, you see it already, skyscrapers, trains, subways, technology is starting to build. And there's also, we're at the verge of seeing real innovation from these countries. China, probably the best example. I mean, innovation is part of their society today. Even though some of the Westerners still think, oh, this is communism, this is the bad guy. But, you know, that is old world thinking. Let me say that. And so this is the reason why innovators actually have a good life right now, and investors are looking almost exclusively for innovative solutions, because they know they will be part of this and not part of something hanging around doing something else. Because this is something most of the entrepreneurs who want to build, you know, a little business, they could do this themselves. But as an innovative entrepreneur, it's a little bit harder. And interestingly enough, as an innovative or supposed to be innovative enterprise, it is much harder. It's an irony, because the companies that theoretically have a lot of money actually don't spend it into the true innovative products. They spend it in innovation centers that actually supposed to build innovative products. But then at the end of this life cycle of, yeah, this is pretty cool, it stagnates. And part of this webinar today is to identify reasons why does it stagnate, and what can we do to bring these two together, the CFO and the innovator. And this can be any department in an enterprise. And before I do this, I want to be very clear. Whether this phrase is right or wrong, I mean, I just needed to put a stake in the ground saying this is how we consider innovation. And for us, innovation is when we introduce groundbreaking change in its successful distribution, meaning the groundbreaking change actually reached the market and is successful. And then the way people conduct business and personal lives based on that innovation. That's for us innovation. Improvement is not innovation. We have this term improvement, and that's good. This is what we did over the last 200 years after the initial innovation were actually created. You know, the car is a car is a car, but then there is no innovation inside the car industry. Now with a new motor, there might be something, but if a car turns into an entirely different experience, and it still would be a car, but it would be different, because the way people conduct business and or their personal lives with this new car, that would make a change. And we see a car manufacturer who's doing that and is more value than sometimes, you know, a whole industry segment of automobile industries in countries altogether. So innovation is when a change happens where people change the way they conduct business or they manage their personal lives. So the World Innovations Forum Innovation Capital Network is an idea that started already a little over a year ago, and it was difficult in the beginning to put it together, but today we have around 900 investors, and these are angel networks actually. So behind those more investors, because each angel network is probably between 20 and 200 angel investors. Then the VCs, private equity investors, and so forth. So currently, we estimate the combined investment power around $1 billion. If we look deeper into our network right now, we see it's probably exceeding that number, but it's big enough to be impressive. So I don't want to exaggerate the numbers. We will put the ICN headquarter into Singapore. And Singapore for a couple of reasons, and one in particular is that Singapore is the place that is most respected in terms of fast and safe and secure company foundation or founding and financing. So the legalese, the taxation, the whole legal structure in Singapore is superior over probably any other country in the world. And so this is why Singapore. And Singapore is also the country where we suggest to new companies to start their headquarters there, not to go there. First of all, it's very expensive and there's no reason to actually go there, but use that as a headquarter. And this is why on how we try to help young entrepreneurs to basically get funded from the rest of the world. Because today, and we see this with our accelerator programs and so on, startups don't get funded when they come from, or very, very difficult, if they come from emerging countries with no good FDI policy, foreign direct investment policies, and the securities and so forth. And so Singapore as a headquarter. From there, we work with investors from around the world. I mean, the network is in the making. I mean, and it's still already pretty impressive. The financing innovation businesses anywhere is what investors look for. And also here, being headquartered in Singapore is for most investors around the world, no matter where they are, even in the existing financial centers like here, Switzerland or New York or London and so on, is still sort of that's a good, safe place. But the World Innovations Forum, to be very clear, remain the headquarters in Switzerland, where we are today. So let's talk about the innovation financing, the art and the science of it. And I talked a little bit about financing innovative startups, and I talked a little bit about financing the innovators basically within corporations. And I have been involved in several projects helping not only, improve the innovation process within the companies, but primarily the financing, because we realized that the curve goes up. Oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah. Whoop. And then all of a sudden, there is no funding for this project, even though it seems to be cool, but there is no funding. And so there is a conflict, and a better understanding why that is also part of today. I think we can say in general, we have two very different, profoundly different investor types. The CFO, basically investing, and it is an investing. And if it's an improvement, then it's not a strategic innovation. Then it's continuous improvement. That's on the cost side. But if you invest in a new technology, in something new, with all the risks that are there, then that's an investment. And VCs, venture capital teams, are over the last 50 years highly optimized for making strategic investments with a long-term return. So when we look into all these big unicorns, unicorn means a valuation that is more than $1 billion. And that doesn't mean that there is $1 billion already invested, but the last investors value the company $1 billion or more and put in the respective money at that valuation. So we can say it's $1 billion company because it was valued by investors like VCs as more than $1 billion. And for those on the CFO or corporate side, it is an understanding, or must be an understanding, that innovation is not some change. Okay, we put some $100,000. This is what startups get. This is what we put in there. Well, this is not working. It's a total waste of money, because out of these 100,000 comes the next step and the next step and the next step, like in every startup. Innovation is not coming like, boom, accidental super thought. Oh, here's the innovation. No, it's a process. And if we don't follow that financial process accompanied with an innovation, then we will fail. And that will cost a lot of money. And I have seen, when we look into companies with huge innovation budgets and huge innovation centers, with thousands of people around the planet, with innovation centers all over, we can actually take that money and deduct that from the balance sheet, from the P&L, because it is a loss. It cannot work. There's no reason why it ever should work. And this is why some of the companies take some of the German automobile manufacturers. Why are they showing cool looking, stylish, futuristic cars that they never built, but they cost billions? Not just millions, billions over the years. And this is why investors and the stock market and the analysts downgrade those companies no matter what they do, and upgrade a company like Tesla, which has 1/10 of the car volume the big guys have, but they have the innovative ideas one after the other, like any upcoming, innovative company. And this is why the stock market says this is the future. And if you look in retrospect, look at, let's start with Microsoft. It was notoriously called overrated. Now, Microsoft is now 30 years old, and totally overhyped value is long gone, but it didn't come down. It actually went up. Facebook, totally crazy. People leave right and left. Clearly, if Facebook loses 1 million users, but has 2.2 billion, that is not even noticed on any report because the number is too tiny. People make it up and they try to get the down hype, but the financial life doesn't work that way. And so we have to get familiar with venture capital into strategic investments which today are basically almost all innovative products and companies, are long-term, and we have to be aware they're flowing roughly hundreds of millions, even billions into these companies. If a CFO is looked at, and we look at their profile, the core function of a CFO, strategic cash and profit optimization, make sure that the company has cash, whatever happens, make sure the company is profitable. And, if need to be, we cut right and left and be rigorous. And this is why, the older companies are going through all kinds of crises, including this one, and expense management. Now, if you look at that, how can somebody who is cash and profit optimized and expense management focused invest in the future technology where the outcome is not even 100% clear? So this is the main reason why corporate enterprises are actually lacking so far behind. And there is no understood structure yet what need to be happen in an enterprise. I mean, I can tell you right away, our suggestion is that with the financial structure, within the financial structure in an enterprise, there need to be sort of an internal VC that actually supports ventures with capital. And so this is a corporate VC. And that person who runs that most likely will, at least in the beginning, report to the CEO and to nobody else. And then over time, when the CFO understands how this all works, and they're not stupid, they're some of the smartest people on the planet, then they realize, okay, there is a budget to be allocated and to be managed and monitored, has different rules than internally, and we're good to go. So the next question we're seeing, why is my amazing idea not adequately valued? And this comes from, I would say, hundreds of thousands of internal innovation lab people, but at the same range from startups. And there are a couple of reasons why that frustration pops up, and I think we have to understand. So I wrote a blog post. It's one of the most read blog posts I ever wrote. The initial value of an idea is 0. And there's a lot of controversial discussions whether, come on, Axel, this is not true because we can't do anything without the initial idea. I mean, that is sort of the spark. Without that, nothing goes. Well, it's true, but the value, financial value, is 0. And the reason is a human has on average 10 to 20 or 30,000 ideas per year. Times 7.8 billion people, we're talking about 7 to 30 trillion ideas. We're drowning in ideas, even though they're not realized, they're just popping and going. But it is an idea, and the value of these ideas is exactly 0. You can have the best idea in the world, and even if you have the concept and the business plan, this is no value. It is cool. Good for you, then make something. If you look at what I'm having here in yellow, the value of innovation grows with its distribution. Meaning if I have something, I build something, this device here is a mouse, that was probably 40 years ago or something like that. This device has become a huge value for the company who built it, actually a Swiss company, over time, because there were by now actually billions of mice were produced. If this would be an idea in a drawer, 0 value, 0 financial value. If it's a value for you, be proud of it, put it in your drawer and be excited. But commercially is no value. If we have a market validation, that grows the value a little bit, but still economically no value yet. Once you have a prototype, it's getting even better, but still almost no economic value yet. And then boom, the black one here, customers. If you win customers, this is when you start value. This is when you put down here, the first couple of coins together, and then you grow it. And that is the value of your idea at the end of the day. But before that, unfortunately, you can put it upside down. You may not like it. But, the world is not always fair. it is of no value. So therefore, don't be frustrated when your idea is undervalued in your opinion. It's simply undervalued by the market. People say, yeah, it's nice, but I'm still not investing. So the question then is, what do you need to do to get funding? And that is an entirely different arena where you start to move. Because all of a sudden, the technology, the product, the fanciness is actually relatively not interesting. And so when we look at what top VCs or CFOs who are actually investing, so those few who get the money together and invest in innovative products, who come out and then all of a sudden, boom, there is a new arena. The first, and this is, again, there's a lot of, I think the last blog post was the lot of counterintuitive things about innovation. The first people look, funny enough, is at IP, but they would never look at IP if nothing else exists. Because even if you have the greatest patent on earth, you got to show something. But that's the starting point, because this is the idea starting everything else. So is it unique? Do you have patents? Do you have methods? Do you have processes? Do you have unique technology? So that's the one. So this is your idea starting point column. Then both types, VCs and CFOs, look at registrations of patents or the company and so forth, contracts you already have, employees, your leadership. Is the team really a leadership team that can take whatever you invented forward into a very crowded and super competitive global market? And it doesn't matter whether you're a startup or whether you are a corporate innovation lab. And if it's just the idea and some happy customers, but the team is too weak to actually get it into the market against all odds, you will not get funding from your CFO. And I have to say, rightfully, because it would be a very tragic way, trying hard, and then end it. The next they look at is the financials. Is that plan that you put together, is that robust? Is that something that a CFO can say, yeah, nice job, guys. Okay, I love it. Scalability, will you be able to scale? And scaling innovation is a very different beast than scaling a improved product that already is in the market. Fundamentally different. We'll talk about this in another webinar, but when we get to innovation processes. But I can tell you there is no comparison between one and the other. Then services, the team itself. And you see already here, leadership and employees, team comes again on the operational side. Are these employees or teams and the leadership that you will possibly have actually running the operations in a way that the investment is secure, that people say, wow, this team and this idea and what they've done already, amazing. I'd invest right away. And there are teams that get the money like that. And there are teams that just run, eons until they find a little bit of funding. And eventually they fail. The likelihood that a bad or even mediocre team gets to a company all the way to the top is zero. There is no known mediocre team on earth, no matter which country, that actually made it all the way to the top. So neither the VC would invest in this team as a startup, nor the CFO when they come and say, okay, this is what we built, this is what we're gonna go forward. Then the business side, pricing, forecasts, marketing, partners, research. I mean, you will need to know what the price should be based on all the customer interviews you did. You should be able to do a forecast based on the appetite of the customers you interviewed and worked with. You should have a good idea about how to get it to market. And in order to scale, probably have a partner network, because if you build a direct sales force for any product that should go global, very tough. I mean, a partner network would do it. And then research, market research, competition research, technology research, you name it. And then the last part is successes. Every investor looks at success stories, and every investor has heard at least 10,000 times, why do I need an investor if I'm already successful? Then I don't need investors. I need to make it successful. That is Joe Schmo's idea, and I fully can relate to it, because when I was 20, actually 19, and started my first company, I said that too. And I had the luck to have a vice person who actually took the time and explained to me why that is a bad thought. Success stories is not necessarily, oh, I already did billions in revenue, but there need to be a lot of success stories in between. Having an idea that can be patented is a success. Having an amazing team is a success. If I have a leadership team that follows the idea and takes basically their current career at risk in order to make something that is risky anyway to bring forward, that is a success. Have a plan of scalability and services and so on, a pricing, a forecast, all this together are little success stories. And you can put it that way. You show it, if you say, yeah, I showed it, so why do I need to work more than that? Well, if this is your attitude, it's too much work, then you will never be successful running such a company anyway. So it works all together. And then feedback, references, mentions in the public, hey, these guys work on something very cool. I can't believe that they can do that. Those things make investors happy. And so there is no magic of getting funding. The magic is understanding what investors want and need to open up their chest and say, okay, yeah, this is good to go for 5 million or 10 million, $1 million, $500,000, and $1 billion. And so innovation teams, again, whether they are startups or in a corporate, they have to act like entrepreneurs. And an entrepreneur is defined as doing something with nothing. And if you need money to do something, you are an investor. If you want to make something out of your money, then you need money in the first as an investor. But entrepreneurs do something with nothing. And that is an old rule. And particularly these days, applies more than other days where, money get, just thrown around. And so when you're looking for money, develop this entrepreneurial thinking, like this is my company. And a quick story about my own life. So I said it earlier. So I was 19 when I started my first company. It was a total fail. And I realized I have no clue about bookkeeping. I have no clue about sales. I could stitch together a product, but the rest was like foreign to me. And so I told my dad, I'm going to fold the company. And he was smiling and said, Axel, at least you tried. So it's an experience you will never forget in your life. So this is good. And, I was happy that he wasn't angry, or saying, oh, I told you so, blah, blah, blah. But he gave me some advice. So he said, go into a large company and try, to get up the career as fast as possible. But one thing you should do, try to understand the entire company, every aspect, bookkeeping, marketing, sales, operations, financing, and so forth. And I did. And people said, yeah, what are you, you're interested in everything here. Isn't your job to do this? Yeah, that's my job, but I'm still interested. I need to understand the whole company. And this went a year later too. I met in this 78,000 people company, Rockwell International. I met the chief strategic officer who heard about this crazy guy. And so I talked with him and he said, but there is something behind your thinking that you want to know it. I said, yeah, one day I want to build my own company. And he smiled and I thought, okay, this might be the end of the career, because if I want to go to build my own company, then, I wouldn't stay. And he said, this is brave. And so I realized it didn't hurt, but it was a lot of insights I gained. But I learned from him something else. he said, if you are not willing to risk your entire anything you have, your home, your car, and anything, and go back in a shed and start your startup from scratch, then you probably have a good opportunity to grow further as a non-entrepreneurial, C-level executive. And that was very motivating to me. Still, I started, 2 years later, I started my company, and he was actually helping me. But for the record, for the corporate world, not everybody is crazy enough to risk everything they have ever accrued for their own business where they're not even sure whether it works. So there is no risk in actually training the employees with an entrepreneurial spirit. And if they would go anyway. Nobody could help, make them stop. But you get better employees if you give them the empowerment of entrepreneurship. And so this said, when we look at the entire scale of enterprises and entrepreneurial startups, there are a lot of similarities. And the more we know about these similarities, the more we can actually help both, not only the CFOs or the VCs, but primarily the people who are running these businesses, because there is a success pattern on both sides. So if we now understand what we need to do, the question is, how do we get to these international investors? They don't advertise themselves. They're usually actually very difficult to reach. And if you don't know somebody who knows somebody who knows them, there's probably no way to get there. And what do? Human beings, we try to tap into networks, and this is where we find them. And no different with investors. And hence the name, Innovation Capital Network. And so as an organization, as you know, World Innovations Forum is a nonprofit organization. We're helping teams from emerging nations to start the headquarters in Singapore in order to even get funded. And then monthly investor briefs we send out to these investors with the top companies we identified. On the innovation side, we're also helping innovation centers to get the necessary fundings from their CFOs. And that is, as you'll realize today, that's a two-sided, challenge, because we need to help the innovation center teams to actually not only build something innovative, but actually being aware that innovation is the process also getting the product into the market. When we go back to the initial slide, it is when the innovation is distributed to the world. And the value curve said the innovation value is growing with its distribution. So the product alone doesn't do it. It needs the environment, so to speak, a host that nurtures it. It's like life itself. I mean, a sperm doesn't do anything on its own. It needs a host and then nurturing, and we all know the rest of it. So innovation is not just a piece of product. And if you looked at our website, for instance, you see there are 5 innovation types. Product innovation is the first. This is the most obvious. But then there is business model innovation. And if you're looking into the most innovative companies from the last 10 years, most are actually business model innovations. That is not seen really from the outside. It's difficult to identify, but they're billion-dollar companies or multi-billion-dollar companies. And so business model innovation is more than just a product. It's actually the whole business model and understanding the market and bring it there. And we also help investors fund groundbreaking innovation because, as I said earlier, that is not that obvious how to actually fund it. And if you're a CFO or have a CFO in your company that is trained, trimmed, I mean, the best of the best in getting cash flow and profitability done, and observe the expenses and navigate the whole capital world, including the stock market and what's all around it, That is amazing, but it still is not really what we need in innovation financing or innovation funding. It's the same like, okay, you should operate on a open heart. Well, yeah, it's amazing if somebody can do that, but as a CFO, you probably would not, because you've never done it and there was never a request. And that is something corporate C-level executives need to realize. In the last 50 years, there was, in the early days and the last 100 years before that, there was no request in a company to invest in innovation the time and the way we need it today. Remember the innovation tree, one pops off the other, and it will not stop. If you build one groundbreaking innovation, let's say by middle of next year, great, go for it. But half year later, you will need to start something else, and again and again and again, because somebody else will. So it isn't that we're innovation maniacs, but this is how the world evolves. And the world evolves basically based on our mind. One experience after the other creates new ideas. It's a chemical process in our neurons. It's no magic, it's no divine spark. It's just up there. And this is now distributed among many minds and many people on the planet. So we're helping teams from both camps get investment ready and get innovation to market. That's basically where we are today. And what does it take to be investment ready? That's still the final big question. No, we need to understand that, and on both sides, that investment in innovation is not $50,000, $100,000. We're talking millions. And this is no different between an enterprise team or a startup. Zero difference. Both are humans, both are intelligent people, both are creative, both are innovative, and both are stellar teams. Let's take this. So why should there be any difference in getting innovation to a market that is probably not seeing the innovation coming yet, but all of a sudden over the next 3 to 5 years, it pops, and in 10 years, it's mainstream. Enterprises don't see the first 3 to 5 years. They see it when it's mainstream and the company goes public. There was an interesting story. One of our VCs, actually in the last company, was funded by a major Japanese car parts manufacturer. So they put their money in to make more of it. Yeah, invest in a couple of startups. But then something happens all of a sudden to them. About 50 kilometers north or south, from them, a startup has grown in their shadow, so to speak, and went public with the same but much better products that they did. They completely disrupted their internal market. And the executive team said, how could this happening? So we need early warning systems. We need this and this and that so that we know when this is happening so we can respond. That was about 25 years ago. So today they realized, and they became a client of ours before we started with the World Innovations Forum. They understood that they don't need an early warning system and a market research and be worried about their competitors. They need to know their customers. If they see an opportunity when the customer is unhappy or whatever it is there, by understanding them exactly how they work, then you can develop or start a new innovation. If it is copying the next competitor because he or she did some innovative, well, then you're still number two. You're still a follower. You're still not a leader. So forget the competition. And so getting investment ready means bigger numbers and needs what I said earlier, unique products and so forth. And then you as the innovator, you need to select your investor. And that again is no different in startups than in corporates. If you're building and you're committed to build innovation within your business, and you know your CFO has never been trained or educated on innovation financing, then this is not your investor. If you are tasked by the CEO, then you need to get back to the CEO. And if the CEO says, no, you finance, you talk to the CFO, you need to educate your CEO. And that might be, depending on the culture within a company, difficult. But if the CFO is your only potential investor and it doesn't work, you'll probably need to look for a new job. I mean, you can say, okay, I'm hanging in there and continue to la investment. I know it's not going to fly anyway, but so what? But when you're 50 or 60 and you look back in your life and say, screw this. I mean, I should have gone a long time ago into a company where innovation get funded because you wasted your talent. And it's also the other way around. If the CFO comes back and says, this is not innovative enough, well, you need to turn on a few more neurons to get truly groundbreaking innovation, because improvement is nice, but that's not what we're up to here, right? So from the innovator side, get your data in order. If we go through this whole list that I showed you a little bit earlier, there are a couple things, except one, that are critical. Successes, while you innovate, already show successes with your first beta or alpha or test customers. Have a stellar team. There is nothing you can do with your mediocre team. There's everything you can change with a stellar team. And you have to have the ambition to do that. And if that's not there because it's just a job, well, then look for something where the ambition comes out of you. It's probably the wrong area. Nothing wrong with that, but just look for something else. And then research. You have to understand your market, your customers, the technology, the field, the financial trends. I mean, you have to understand the full scope of where you're investing in and where you're innovating for. And on the investor CFO side, know what you want. I mean, if you are on the financial side, and I know we have a wide spectrum here, if you're on the financial side and you don't want to invest big time, but you're willing to do a little bit, well, then do your company a favor and don't think about innovation. Think about improvements, and that is easier to handle and to manage. That is easy to get along with, and there is no risk taking, and everything you need to know to invest in innovation does not apply there. But that's something that is really needed to make a conscious decision internally. Do we want to go for groundbreaking, disruptive innovation? And groundbreaking and disruptive is basically innovation itself. I just use these terms to make it very clear. It's not improvement. And this decision has to be done. And I mean, in large organizations, we have seen people who want to do and want to be innovative, but cannot because there's nobody in the company leadership bench that is willing to take any risk, any decision, any moving forward. So that means the decision with that is done and made by not going for innovation. And as an investor, get familiar with capital needs. Like I said a couple times earlier, it isn't done with $50,000 or $100,000. It is, it is millions, if not billions. I learned from a friend of mine. He was the CTO of BMW. That was about 25 years ago. The 7 Series BMW, I think this was the 90s, cost $7 billion in investment. Just the entire and everything related to building this new model. And that was just an improvement over the previous. It was not an innovative car, not at all. It was cool. I liked it. I drove one, but $7 billion R&D cost. Now you can imagine that what an innovative car would cost in such an organization. Now the question is, does it need to be in that organization, or is it better to farm out? because Tesla didn't need $7 billion to invent, so to speak, a whole thing, an innovative car, and started this company. So there are other forces, needed to observe or to make these financial decisions. And they are very, very, very different from one company to the next. I mean, one company has a lot of union leaders in the board. I mean, already there that this is a different navigation than if they're all, up and coming companies, CEOs in that board. The type of team, the industry you're in. I mean, everything is different. So there is no general, this is what you have to do. There's only one. You have to be very clear and transparent for you and the executive team. What do you want? Okay, so I think I want to close with reach for the stars. I mean, it's an old phrase, but it still indicates, I mean, with one word, where to go for. And if we want to go to space, it takes courage. I mean, lots of it. And if we go for innovation in any way or shape, it takes courage, courageous people, and risk taker. Otherwise, innovation cannot be developed, because innovation means breaking rules. And we're trained from kindergarten all the way up to finishing university, and the first probably 5 to 10 years in business. Don't break rules. So how will you innovate if you learn that that is your success pattern and this is how your brain is wired? So therefore, there's a couple people who are rule breakers, and that's the one you want to take. So November 5, which is actually at Blue Column, our sort of mothership, Deep Innovation Design Method is a webinar that you might want to consider. The Blue Column Deep Beta Start is on November 24th. So that's a technology. And so we're not wanted to advertise Blue Column here because that's a for-profit company, and World Innovations Forum is a nonprofit, but you might be interested to check it out. Then in January, we don't have the date yet, but we want to run a CFO Innovation Investment Training. February 3, that's already set. There is a strategic meeting, members only, WIForum 2021. And on February 26, we run our first Alexandria meeting. So I'm myself very curious how this works, because what we want to do, with our vision of World Innovations Forum being a space for innovative minds with no borders and no limits, we want to actually do what Alexandria was, in ancient history, a place where all kinds of crazy people go with their absurd ideas. And, today still a star is Leonardo da Vinci, and he was on these meetings. And so we thought it would be great to have a meeting with no agenda other than sharing crazy ideas. And crazy means impossible ideas. Things that you really want to build, but it's impossible to do today. And if you go back to the tree where one innovation sits on top of the other, there is no fantasy ever existed, probably just 500 years ago, of what is mainstream today. That means we're building up on crazy ideas over and over and over again. You remember probably Captain Kirk's communicator, opening up, flipping up. We had it as a cell phone. I mean, this sci-fi was basically created while I was already alive. Would not even come up with the idea to do what our smartphones do today. We couldn't even imagine that we have more power in a smartphone than NASA had to get our guys to the moon in the 60s. So which means there is no limit in our thinking, and there is no impossible product that we can think of. It's impossible maybe today, but not in the future. And we want to get this together. So WIForum Foundation membership, if you want to join us and hear more, there's a lot of things that we offer. Look at wiforum.org, and if you go to the join, obviously we would be happy to have you as a member. ICN membership, by the way, no charge, but you need to be a member to join the ICN, the Innovation Capital Network. And as an organization, we're looking for members who are willing and interesting to drive something. It isn't that we offer, I mean, we do offer all kinds of services, but it isn't the reason for us existing offering services. That's not what we started it for. We started for having a membership fee that allows us to do the job and to scale and to do things that we have no clue today what we will do in the next 5 to 10 years. But I know it will be amazing because that is simply the whole spirit of the World Innovations Forum. With that, thank you very much. And if there's any questions, I give it back to Alyssa.
Thank you, Axel, for that presentation. Yes, as he said, we are now open for questions. If you have any questions, please put them in the Zoom question and answer box and we can address them. We already have some questions that have come in, so I will jump right into it. This is a bit of a long question. There's multiple questions within it, so I can read it all and we can go through them one by one. So here it goes. If one is location nomadic, is Singapore still a good option for their company? Can someone have a company registered there but still run the business from other parts of the world? And lastly, isn't one of the biggest challenges in registering a business in Singapore the fact that one has to have a local director?
Okay. So I think most of the people here in this in this group are probably digital nomads one way or the other. And Singapore is known for its amazing structure building capabilities. So the answer number one is yes, it's still okay for nomads. I think you have to be never there and still be able to run a company. You just need to have somebody who's helping you do that. Secondly, no, you don't have to live there in order to build it. I think that was sort of the second question. And the third, can you run it and still run your business somewhere else? Absolutely. Otherwise, we wouldn't even suggest that. The idea is that if you're from wherever in the world, actually stay there and help your country to get more innovative. The only reason why we suggest to go with a headquarter outside your country is because you wouldn't get, in most countries, you wouldn't get funding from professional investors. And since the countries are not all yet there with their foreign direct investment policies like the top 10 or 15 developed countries. So there are 200, so meaning 185 countries are not there yet. So that's a reason to go to Singapore. And if I remember correctly, there are services, and lots of them actually, where you pay about $2,000 a year and you have the director and running your business headquarters, so to speak, for you. And so you never have to go there. You get everything digitized. I mean, Singapore is by far the most advanced country on this planet. And so there should be no worries that there's anything not digitized and you have to be physical there. I think that was...
Yes, I think you definitely captured all of that question there.
Okay.
We have something that's come through. If we haven't answered your question, though, please feel free to reach back out and we can address anything that we might have missed. But here, I was wondering whether you have maybe examples where big companies allowed innovation within and what made this possible.
Yeah, so I do. I mean, you know, with big companies, that the problem is that you never can name them. But I know this is one very large pharmaceutical company, and there is innovation within, and it is the interest of the leadership organization, meaning the C-level of the company. And they basically spread the word very intelligently throughout the company, saying we need more innovation. I mean, I think this, if I would call a phrase of the year in 2020, it would be probably, guys, we need more innovation, or we need to be more innovative. And so the possibility is based on a couple things. One is that innovation wasn't like dictated, but it went down from the C-level to the mid-management, and from the mid-management into the organizations, with asking people to be more innovative. And the response was obviously from some people, hey, this is very cool, we want to participate. And we actually trained about 600 managers in that company from around the world. And then there were others saying, yeah, it's nice, but I don't have time. And so the result was, okay, there need to be more inspiration rather than anything else for inspire more people to innovate. Because in the past structure of pretty much any company, if you do something outside your current business, there is no reward. And if you're innovative and you don't know how to, whether you will actually have great ideas, then that would not work, because the fear that you're doing something outside your work and be not successful with doing that, then you're running the risk to get fired. And so people have little to no motivation to actually innovate within an existing company. Now, we can say that because about 2 years ago, we began to realize how ideas are composed in our minds, and it's not really any randomness. There are processes. So like if you train any kind of part of your body, you know with a high likelihood that you can train that. We can train people who had car accidents and other things to walk again. And you know, there are procedures that we can manage. With ideas, it wasn't clear, or it was not known how, and even if it's possible. So today it's possible. And so getting people on one of those trainings is probably a good idea. And the motivation mechanism within the company is critical to get people out of their job. And so one of the companies actually farmed out the whole innovation activities in a separate entity. And that, I think, was a really good idea. And one is here in Zurich. So I had good relationships and contacts with them, so I know how it works there. My daughter actually works in a company in Germany who is, I would say a giant, I don't know, 50, 60,000 employees. And she works actually in this innovation lab where people are hired and, you know, looked from within the company to do nothing but innovation. It's the job, it's the task. And so that is a helpful decision, because people would go there if they have the desire and if they want to innovate. And if people want to do whatever they do, then this is always great. So there's a couple of other things. I mean, like we talked about financing, we talked about support in terms of research and access to resources within the organization. But I think the motivational part and the knowledge that, okay, this will be financed if we get to groundbreaking innovation are probably the two big columns to make it happen.
Great. That was a well-answered question then. We had another one that's come in. This relates a little more to, I think, our ambassador network. So you might want to just touch on our ambassador network. But the question is, do you have an office in Ghana?
Okay. So no, we don't have a physical office ourselves, but we're working with so-called ambassadors. And these are volunteers, but highly engaged and believing in our future, so to speak, in our vision. And so we have somebody in Ghana, an ambassador who takes care of everything what's going on in that country. Actually, in Ghana, we have an amazing one. And so more than happy to make an introduction and see how we all together can help.
Perfect. Yes. And as Axel said, the ambassador information is actually available on our website. And I can share that with you guys afterwards. So you can look at who is an ambassador in what country. So going back, another question that we have is, how do I know if my startup is innovative enough to receive funding, and who can I talk with before I start approaching investors to validate my innovative idea?
Okay, that's a good one. And I mean, just because the intuition would say, okay, go to some investors and check whether they would invest, maybe some good ones that you know, but that would actually be a bad idea. One of these many counterintuitive things. The best way to find out if your idea is truly innovative, unique, and nobody else has it, and the market loves it, is the market itself. So if you go to your customers, or if you don't have customers yet, to your prospects for that product, then find out from them what you want and what you think you need to know. And there is a technique we use, that idea validation. There is actually only 2 or 3 questions to ask, and if you ask these questions, you will get from the audience the best answer. An investor, like including me, I could not answer, is this a good idea or not? I can tell you if it's an idea that already is existing in the market, but this is something you'll find out yourself thanks to Google. You Google everything, every version of what you have, and figure out if this is unique or not. And if it's not unique, then it's not innovative. So that's one part. Then to make it innovative is probably a good idea to look at our accelerator program, because it isn't easy to explain, you have to do this and this and this to be innovative. Like, okay, here are the 3 steps to get to groundbreaking innovation and build $1 billion company. This is very much like, okay, read this book, Rich in 30 Days. It's not going to work that way. But we helped teams, both from corporates as also startups, to get to innovation with what they had. I mean, in the last 2 accelerator programs, we helped every team to get innovative. And there was one was very interesting. It was in Southeast Asia. It was a typical copycat from, like, you see this from many early startups around the world, doesn't matter where they come from. Oh, I can do this and I can make it cheaper. No, this doesn't work. This is not innovative, and you wouldn't get funding for that. Okay, what can I do? And so there is not this immediate answer, of course, but we work together with the other teams in these accelerator programs to get to innovation. So that might be something you need to look at.
Okay, that definitely answered the question. And another one that's come in, you talked about the ICN, so the Innovation Capital Network, and becoming a member. And you said it's part of the membership package, but is there any qualification process that you have to go through if you were an investor?
Oh yeah, good question. Sorry, I didn't answer that in the presentation. Yes, there is. So we're looking for so-called accredited investors, and there are countries which have very clear rules about what is accredited investor. It's typically $200,000 that you have basically income, and $1 million you have sort of as you can use for investments. In Europe, it's a little bit less, or it was, I believe. And so this is one of the technicalities that we require. The other is we typically do actually a quick interview to see whether you are a qualified investor, because sometimes people don't know if they are or not. And if you never invested in any kind of innovation, either as a startup investor or a private equity investor, then you're probably not. But if you're very interested to get there, we would definitely want to help you. I mean, no question. But that it would be different for us to engage, whether you say, oh, okay, I have 20 startups I've invested in 3 or 5 private equity deals. So yeah, of course, we know, but we would have a chat and then find out where to go from there.
Perfect. And as Axel said, there is information available on the website, and more will be coming up regularly. But if you have any questions about the ICN, please feel free to reach out to us directly. So I want to flip it to the other side now. Somebody actually has a question that they are a startup and they are interested in sharing their one-page brief. You mentioned that on one of the slides with our investor network. What is the process and requirements?
Okay, there are 2 things. One is we would like you to register with all the details on the World Innovations Forum website. There is a 007 registration, and we don't want James Bonds, but 007 because 0.007% of humans are actually entrepreneurs. And so it's a very tiny number. And so we're treating these 0.007% like gold. And so we would definitely be helpful to see what we can do. Another option would be, or actually an added option, if you're from a country where there is an ambassador of ours, would be great to have a chat with them too. And if you don't know, I would say simply send it to us by email at this stage, and we will look at it and we will respond to you. I mean, no complicated approval process or anything like that yet. Yeah.
Great. I think unless there's any more questions come in, we have one more. And so if anybody has any last minute that they've just thought of, please put it in the question box. This is a little more general about the World Innovations Forum, but how do you become a partner of the World Innovations Forum?
Okay, so it obviously depends on what you mean with partners. We have on the membership side, we have basically individual members and corporate members, and the corporate members is what we consider partners. And so there is, in the registration, there is basically a form. But I would also say, if you want to become a partner or corporate member, simply send us a quick email what you expect and what you want to do and why. I mean, obviously we would love to have corporate partners, obviously, but if we know a little bit better, then it would be good to know that, and then we would simply have a phone call or Skype call or Zoom or whatever is appropriate. Yeah.
Great. Yep, that definitely answered the question. And with that, it looks like all of our questions have been finished or answered. So I will close this out. Thank you again for everybody who stayed on with us for this webinar. I hope you found it beneficial. And thank you, Axel, very much for presenting today and answering all the questions that we had. And if you haven't already, please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And as Axel said, please consider being a member of the World Innovations Forum. We have a lot of exciting programs that are coming out 2021 at the beginning, all the way through. And you'll just gain some extra knowledge from this and from all the options that we have coming out. It is a great community to be a part of, and we are looking for innovative minds. So anybody is welcome to join. Like you see on the screen right now, we'll be hosting the next knowledge transfer series on Monday, December 7th. It is the Innovation Dream Team Builder. This will be the last one for our 2020, and we will go into 2021 going forward. We will have some more coming out shortly. I will follow up with everybody by email. I'm including the new registration link as well as the presentation and the video recording. So if you missed anything, you will definitely get a hand of that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Axel. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Alyssa. Wonderful. And see you soon. Bye-bye.